and then it creates a new string that's 2 characters, then it creates a new string that's 3 characters, but every time it creates a new string, it has to copy all of those results in. So this is an extremely inefficient process. So it only took 3.8 seconds to concatenate 50,000 characters. If you thought this was a linear process, maybe that's 4 times as long, right? So maybe 12 seconds. Give it 16 seconds, right? So it's 3.8, call it 4 seconds, 16 seconds. No, it's so much worse than that. Because the longer the string, the more operations you have to copy. So to copy 50,000 characters, you're really doing like 50,000 factorial kind of copies or something to that effect. 200,000 factorial is much worse than exponential. So this is going to run, I think, for about 2 minutes before it actually gets there. We'll see. We'll let it keep running. And we'll check back in on this as we go along. But this is the first problem that we're going to try and solve. You cannot do it this way with any sufficiently sized item. Okay, 200,000 characters, 200K may not seem like that much, but I mean, we could be dealing with strings in the millions, the billions. I mean, we can start talking about big data that is quite large. So there's a better way. So while that's running in the background, I'll keep an eye on it. Head right back to where we were with the idea of it. No, what did I do? I want to go here, and then, oops, okay. I want to use a string builder. So because strings are immutable, strings cannot be changed, it is better to use something that is dynamic. It can be changed. A string builder is one such item, and here is something that actually should look familiar, the append method. Where do you remember the append method, Ben?
Working with text files, I can see.
No.
Array?
What kind of arrays? Because there is no append method in an array. Lists, on the other hand, are a different beast altogether. What's the difference between an array and a list? Someone from the 4th row back. Lists are dynamic. They can change size. They are not immutable. An array, like a string, is immutable. It can't be changed. So this looks a bit like the interface to a list, a dynamic list of characters. So here, we create a string builder object, and we begin appending characters. Now, the for loop itself, starting at length -1, going greater than or equal to 0, is just going to start at the last character, working its way to the first character. And the important piece when using a string builder is a string builder is not a string. In order to get the string representation of this thing you've built, you have to call toString. ToString is, again, it's a member of the object class. You can say anything toString. It's guaranteed to be there. So if you need to modify things and append things, you can use a string builder. By the way, have we? Yeah. Go back to Visual Studio. So a factor of 4 increase in size resulted in going from 4 seconds to 109 seconds. Or 108, actually. 108 is a little easier to divide by. No, I'm not dividing by 3. Never mind. 109 seconds. So we're talking a great deal more time. With a string builder, however, let's go and look at the same code or the same results, but a string builder. So, same difference here. Here's the duplicate character function for a string builder. Instead of using plus equals, we're using append. Append, okay, so we've got actually a couple of things here. All I care about is this guy here, the duplicate character function. We're doing the same kind of benchmark, but we're starting with 200,000 characters. It took 1:48. Got to run the correct version. We don't want the slow version. We want the string builder. Nope, it's done. 200,000 characters, runs in 0.009. Now, this is not a good benchmark. It's running on my machine. It's going to run different on your machine that runs at a different clock frequency. But we can compare algorithms. I ran both algorithms in the same setup. We're better, okay? Because we're not locked down to this immutable string, okay? So to use this, but let's also take a look at the other method here. Here's a method for extracting capital letters. It uses a string builder. This is doing a search, and it's only grabbing the capital letters. So if the character, and again, what is this? This is a static method of the character class. So if the character CH is an uppercase character, we append it to the string. And what are we doing here? We're grabbing out the capitals from the name of the company that wrote the book. We're also reversing it. Reversing it is, as we saw, going from the start to the finish. Okay, this is the first example we looked at. We're just using the append method. The output right there, Yemadak, actually I should probably just read it on my screen, Yemadak Karadat, and the only capital letters are DA. All of these things happen much faster than if you're dealing with generic string implementations, because of the problem that they're immutable. Every time you make a modification, you're actually creating a brand new string of the same size or larger, and you're copying character by character in there. Back to... Not really what I expected to see. Okay, so just to go over each of this, a string builder, you can give it, its constructor, a parameter, which would be the appropriate capacity. Now, that doesn't mean that it's stuck at that capacity. It will grow just like a list will grow, but this is an initial capacity. By default, it's 16 characters. You have a property, or a field, I'm not sure which, that tells you what its capacity is, and then a different property called length. So there's a very important difference between capacity and length. Length is how many characters there actually are. Capacity is how big the buffer is. So the buffer will be bigger than the length. You'll never have the capacity be smaller than the length. Right? You can't have a capacity of 8 and have a length of 10, because how would that work? But the capacity will change kind of without you knowing. If you do an append, not all appends will take the same amount of time. If you use the default 16 characters, you can append 16 times, and then it's got to allocate some more memory somewhere. And so to do that, it's going to have to allocate new memory. It'll probably copy that stuff over. So that 16th append might take more time. But it'll probably do it in some sort of a doubling fashion. So it'll default to 16, and then 32, 64, 128, and so on. There is an indexer. The syntax is this, open bracket, int index. But it's whatever the name of the variable is, the instance variable. Bracket. So it's just the way you've always seen brackets, S sub I. After the exam, we're going to start talking about this. And if you think it's difficult to understand objects now, wait till I start talking about this thing called this. This gets complicated real fast when you're talking about this. It's a preview of coming attractions. That's what the conversation's going to look like. I'll be as precise as possible. Okay. Now, these should look very familiar because these are the same kind of methods that you have in a list. And it's because they share an interface. Append, remove, you can remove whole sections, sort of like substring. Substring will return a new string. You can remove, starting at a particular index to a length. You can insert, and this is pretty powerful, you can insert a whole string in the middle of a string. And it does this either by using some sort of a linked list interface or some dynamic interface. The beauty of having this encapsulated in a class is it doesn't matter. You don't care. You know that the run times for these are not quadratic or exponential. It's not going to increase in size. It's going to be fairly linear. And so it doesn't matter. You basically can run pretty quick. You can also find old strings, replace them with new strings, like a regular expression type thing. But the most important method for a string builder is toString, because you can't print out a string builder object. You can only print out a string. Okay, we've seen these. This, by the way, just a string builder starts out as an empty string. You can't start a string builder out as a string. So if you want to take two strings, concatenate it together, you have to have two strings to start with. And we talked about using the plus operator in a loop or in a chained expression, this plus this plus this, creates all these extra objects. I do just want to show very quickly here what happens. Back to Visual Studio. Here we are. I just want to try, okay, to print. Oh, actually, duplicate character doesn't. Wrote right line. Goodness, that took a long time. Result. Now, result is of type string builder. So this is every time we call duplicate character, which we call it just once here. All right, what did I just do? Is this an error? Oh, you can't see it. Never mind. I'll do it again, just for your benefit. What just happened? Well, this, my friends, is what happens when you print out 200,000 A's. Look at this, though. It took 12 seconds. Why did it take 12 seconds? It should have taken 0.003 seconds, yes. No, this is the fast one. This is the fast one. What? Try parse. No, this is the fast one. This is using append. Well, the only thing I changed was I added this line. If I remove this line and run it again, we're back to being fast. So by process of elimination, that line must have taken 12 seconds. That's because printing to the console is slow. We've got to render each one of those letter A's. It's slow. So it's not a fair comparison. But when you do print this out, C# is smart enough in this fashion to get the string representation. So this is something that you may want to understand about console.writeLine. Excuse me. Is that using this, it will try to automatically get the string representation. It's smart enough to automatically call toString. Super powerful. You're going to be able to write your own objects and create your own string representations of things. Okay? Quickly, just finish this off, and then we can get to the example. Okay. Live demo. We've talked about formatting strings. Okay, there's the toString. ToString works for ints and floats and bools and basically any data type because, I didn't want to say this, but it is true. All classes have a public virtual method called the toString. You should understand at least one of those three words. What is a method? This was not the trick question. A method. There was a method man. That has nothing to do with this class. It's a function. It's just a function. Just a function. Public and virtual have meanings beyond the scope of today's class. Next week we'll begin to talk about what public means. You may have noticed that every project you've checked out, everything has been declared as public, usually public static. Public, virtual, and static are modifier keywords that describe what kind of object something is. Public means everybody can see it. It returns, and this is right from the docs, returns a human-readable, culture-sensitive string. What does it mean for a string to be culturally sensitive?
It'll format quantitative correctly, correct decimal.
Yeah, correct decimal place, correct currency symbol, things like that. Okay, it's sensitive to what culture the .NET framework has been told it's in. You have seen pieces of this format string, okay, when we did formatted I/O. You can say X to print things out in hex, D for decimal. The numeric numbers tell you how many places or how many decimal points, okay. For your next homework, which won't go out until after the exam, because I'm a nice guy, you're going to have to do some very specific formatting. I'm going to want numbers that are presented in the most readable format possible. So if there's no decimal places, I'm going to want you to just display it as an integer. If there's one decimal place, display one decimal place. If there's more than two, only display the first two. So a couple of things is letters. Letters mean something. We're almost reverting back to things like printf, where you had to know what the data type was. So you can have numbers, currency, exponential notation, displayed as a percentage. So that would mean if you put in 0.1, it would display as 10%. Hex. Fixed point for a fixed number of decimal places. So you've seen things like the squiggly 0, the squiggly 1. That means, okay, the first thing goes first, the second thing goes second, so on and so forth. When you deal with numbers, this is what things look like. It just stops being just squiggly 0. It can become squiggly 0 and then a comma and or a colon. And that will tell you how many places. The comma tells you how many total places. And then the colon tells you what to format it as. So this would say fixed 5 decimal places in 10 total spaces right aligned. Index, alignment, format string. I encourage you, when I assign this homework, to go and look at the tests, because I have a direct link to the docs, because I'm specifically not telling you the magic string you're going to need to do the thing. By the way, you're doing the quadratic equation. You're going to be solving for the quadratic equation. Real roots only, no imaginary roots. We'll keep it simple. Next homework will be imaginary roots, because you're actually going to create a class, and then you're going to create a string representation of a complex object. It's going to be awesome. And then you'll have to calculate complex roots. But you'll be able to do math with complex roots. Doesn't that sound exciting? Imagine we could just add 2 complex numbers by saying plus. Pretty helpful, right? Okay, anyway. It's listed in tabular format. It's not something you memorize. It's something you look up when you need it. Okay. Be aware that for dates, there's special stuff just for dates. I don't think we need to deal with this. I think we're much more interested in the exam. Yes?
Yeah.
The exam. Okay. So let me briefly blank this out here. Survey says 19. Blank that out. So the exam is going to be given in Git, okay? I'm going to email out everybody a link. The link is to the exam. If everything goes correctly, you're going to click on the link. You're going to get the exam. Now, a couple of things I need to check as unlinked Git. Okay, everybody in my roster, as of today, has linked a GitHub account with a student account. So your email is associated with your GitHub account. Everybody's linked. So everybody should be able to take the exam. That's thing one. Thing two is the format of the exam. Let me cheat here. I need to go over here. Ooh, I actually have the internet today. That's actually quite impressive. Hello? Click. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. I have a version of the internet. A slow, not so great version. Okay, that's what I needed right there. Go over here. Doo-doo. Looking good. Better. Okay. Ooh, how do I make that show up on... Nope. Stand by. Nope. Also wrong. One more time. Okay. That is not right. That is wrong. I just want to show you the thing. So this is all a result of match title, otherwise window title must match. Oh, can I not? Can I get the screen? Display capture. Display 1. How do I get this to work? All right, well, I'll tell you, what I wanted to show you is what the GitHub page is going to look like. There's a README. It's just going to have the guide rules. Everything's got to be completed and pushed no later than 1 p.m. on Sunday. Any submissions pushed after, and this is all in big font, I'm just reading, after 1 p.m. will not be graded. If you are not graded, you still get a grade. It's not like you get a grade of null. That would be a nullable int. That'd be fun. No, you get a grade of 0. You get a default. No exceptions. The exam is to be your own work only. I didn't think I need to say this, but I will this semester. You cannot go online and ask for help. You cannot ask your buddy. You cannot ask an upperclassman. You cannot ask a lowerclassman. Okay? Any plagiarism or attempt to artificially change your grade from what would normally be your natural abilities will result in an instant F for the course, and you get a letter, and this is a bunch of paperwork. Don't make me do it. I would much rather you email me and ask questions. The worst thing I can do is say, no, I can't tell you that. That's the worst. I don't get mad. I don't care. Whatever. So I will be available on... No, I won't. I will be partially available by email during the weekend. Okay? All right, so what's going to be on the exam? Well, I'll just look at it, shall I? Okay, first thing, you got to remember a few things, like enumerations. Do you know why you have to answer, or you have to know what enumerations are? Oh, I can show you this, I think. Visual Studio Notepad. All right. You need to know what enumerations are, not because enumerations are going to be on the exam, although they will be, but because multiple choice questions will be something like this. I got to go over here. There will be a question. Public you look at something like this. There will obviously be a question. Okay? Your job is to change it to something like that. Okay? That's it. If it's answer A, you put in answers option A. If it's all of the above, if it's none of the above, I'm going to write a test. The test is just going to confirm that you have answered question 1 with something other than no answer. So if you see a test for question 1 that passed, that just means you answered it, not that you answered it correctly. You will get 1 point just for answering it, and then points based on what your answer is. Does that make sense? So just by making it so that you have the test that passed, it doesn't mean you get the points. There are hidden tests that you don't see until after 1 p.m. on Sunday. Copaesthetic? So that's one kind of question. There are other kinds of questions. No, I do not want to reinstall updates right now and restart my computer. I will put something in a return type. I will say return some number. Object is sort of a placeholder. It can be anything. What I'm going to ask you to do is change just this word. Don't change it from public. Don't change the name of the thing. Don't put anything into an argument. Don't touch this. Just change that to the smallest possible correct thing. So you got to know your data types. We talked about signed integers, right? They can only go up to 2 billion and change. So if I say 6 billion, that's not going to work. So that's the second kind of question, is a change the return type question. Next kind of question, something that takes arguments. You have to use the arguments that are provided and return something to me. In this case, it's a string. It could be anything. I could ask for a string, another integer. I could ask for a double. Doesn't matter. But again, whatever the comments say right here, to blah, blah, blah. Whatever that's how it's going to work. I'm going to say do something with this. Maybe it's arithmetic. Maybe it's making a choice. Maybe it's sorting numbers. Okay. Okay. And the return type is fixed. If I say string, it's got to be a string. If it's string array, it's got to be a string array. Question? I mean, if I say string, well, no, string question mark wouldn't really work. Int question mark. You've got to return something that you've got to return an int question mark. If you return an integer that fits into the subset of int nullables, but I mean, it's kind of tough to say without sort of knowing what the question is in advance. But yeah, nullable is an option. It's up to me to tell you, either through the tests or through the question, when to return a null in that instance, okay? Note to self, add a nullable. Okay. There are going to be some questions, I don't really have an example, there are going to be some questions that ask you to throw exceptions. There are going to be some questions where you might have to call a function that I know is going to cause an exception, right? It'll be a function that just says, like, throw this. And you have to catch it and not break. Okay, so exceptions are part of this. Some might say, given a certain condition, throw an exception. Given another condition, throw a different exception. Okay, and I'm going to check to make sure that that exception occurs. That's how my test is going to work. Normally, tests work via not causing exceptions. The test passed if no exceptions occur. I can make tests that only pass if a particular exception occurs. Multiple choice we talked about, and that's basically it. There may be, formatted I/O, but not formatted with numerics. Just print these kinds of things. Okay. As far as the tests that you're going to get, they will not be a complete list. They will be enough to make sure that you haven't broken anything. Okay. Last year, I made a statement to the following effect. If you pass in a program that compiles, actually I lied, I swapped it around. If you pass in a program that doesn't compile, you get a 0. Okay? Do not do that. I'm going to give you a project that compiles. It may throw exceptions, it may not finish running, but it will compile. Please do me the courtesy of returning something that compiles. Makes it a lot more difficult to grade. Here's the other thing. If you somehow find a way to break the secret hidden tests, I'm going to just comment out that section of code that offends. You're going to lose the points. You shouldn't be able to break the tests if you follow the rules. The rules are, if it tells you to just change the return type, only change the return type. If it says return one of the enumerations, just return the enumerations. Changing things like public or the argument list, great way to break the tests. I do put a lot of effort into the tests that I give you to inspect the method signatures and make sure you haven't broken it. But I can't outthink you guys. You will come up with a way that I have never seen before. And next semester's class will benefit because I'll sort of know that it's a thing and I'll add that test in. But you will get penalized for breaking the test. You won't get the points. Okay? There are plenty of you here, and I want to give you feedback. The advantage of doing it this way is you get the test back within a couple of hours, right? So what's going to happen is I will clone your repository locally. I will patch in my tests. I will run the tests, and then I will push the results. Actually, I don't even need to run the tests. I will push the tests back up to Travis. Travis will grade them. You will be able to instantly see them. That's how it's going to work. The thing that takes a long time is when you break the tests. Or, and this is the other thing you can do, get an endless loop. If your program causes an endless loop, all tests following that test break. They get 0 points. I will go in and try to figure out what you did. I will kill that offending test, and you will get 0 points for that. But then it will run the rest of the tests. So that's where the time is really going to be spent, me fixing weird things that you do. Okay, that's it. That's what the test is going to be. And it's going to be on everything we've talked about up till now. It's going to be, I come in, and you can make sure that you've correctly cloned it. I know sometimes things happen when you click on the link that sometimes you don't actually get the repository. I have to go in and manually tweak something, but that's all we're going to do. Okay? Reminder, academic honesty policy. I'm recording it. It's here for posterity. You cheat on the exam, you get an F for the course. I reserve the right, after I've posted your grades through Travis, right? Travis is going to tell you what you get, to then fail you if I find something amiss. Your grade is the raw score, not your final score. So one of the things that's going to happen is I'm going to run a measure of source code similarity. So for the programming problems where you have to do something, you submit the same solution as somebody else, F not just for the problem, for the whole exam. We all understand what happens when you cheat on an exam. Homeworks and stuff, yeah, fine, you get a 0 on the homework. Exams, just gone. Thanks for playing. Come back next semester, and we'll start again. I'm very forgiving. I don't hold a grudge, but you do have to pay for the mistake. Other questions?
So let's say you pass all your tests that you know, and then you fail all the hidden tests. Does that mean technically you failed tests?
I mean, it's not going to be a great grade for you.
Yeah.
It'll be an okay grade. Now, I mean, some of the things, like the multiple choice question, like you're either going to get it or you're not. The only thing that the test says is, did you do no answer? In fact, let me just, I'll show you exactly what one of those tests might look like. Boop, boop. Yes, you can't see that. That's good. Go over here. So, the test for one of the questions just looks like this. Oh, that's kind of ugly. Oh. It just says assert that the result that you gave for a particular question is not, wait. Oh, this is for, I'm sorry, this is a slightly different, I grabbed the wrong one. This is for one of the return types. All I'm saying is make sure that the return type of that function is an object, right? So when you have to change object, it just makes sure that it's something other than object. It's just like you didn't leave it blank. For the one I was trying to tell you was, I'll find it. Yes, there it is. Okay. Leaving aside all this stuff up here, just ignore that. It just asserts that your answer is not no answer. There are ones that just assert that the result is not null or the result is not blank. I'll usually, if for something like that, I'll return a blank string if I want a string. And then it's up to you to make it, something real. So that's all I'm looking for. Question?
So, I mean, when you said cheat, I'm just wondering what resources I have.
The internet. I take that back. Your book is allowed. The Microsoft Docs are allowed. Anything where other people write code for you is not. Stack Exchange for the exact question, not allowed. For reference about how a particular thing works, allowed, but the documents, the Microsoft.docs is going to be faster. You understand what I'm saying? You can't have other people's work being represented as your own.
Let's say you find an example for counting numbers on the internet, and then you say, okay, this is how that works, and so you can't use that all the time, right?
You can use it as research, but you can't just like type the question in and just copy and paste in the solution. Yeah, you can't ask Chegg for the answers to the exam. That's not allowed. So that's what I'm looking for. So it's Open Note, Open Book, Open Microsoft Docs, Open Visual Studio. You can obviously run this as many times as you want. Keep trying things. You can't talk to each other. You can't talk to other people about the exam. For the duration of the exam, you can't even talk to each other about general programming concepts. Okay? Or other people. Can't ask your friend, your dad, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. It's off limits. Other questions?
So the general layout of the test is going to be either a return answer, change the object in the line, throw an exception, and what was the other one?
Multiple choice.
That was one I forgot I said.
Multiple choice, or just like a generic programming problem where you have to compute something based on some numbers.
Okay, so the other one is make a program.
Yep.
Okay.
But it'll all be encapsulated into methods. A method for this question, a method for that question, a method for this question. The main program isn't going to be looked at, but it still has to compile. So a lot of people will put test code in main and just run it. It still has to compile. Even if all your functions work, but your main doesn't compile, you get nothing. You got to give me a compiling program. Okay. Are you pointing at me or asking a question? What's up there? Problem 2, which one? The random numbers?
Yes.
Was that the one where you said like 5 numbers between 1 and 6? Okay. Int dot parse. Okay, this is not going to pass everything, but read the line. That's the number. Run a loop n times. I forgot something up above, but this is not the full solution. This is not going to pass all the tests. This is the idea. Okay? You enter in 5, 1, and 6. It's going to run that loop 5 times. It's going to call random.next with a min and a max. That's the idea. There are several problems with this. First off, it doesn't work for Bob. So you have to deal with all of the problems that come there because there are some minimums. But I might mention that for a nullable int x, there is a method x value or default. I believe it's value or default, whereby you can get the value if it exists or some default number. So if it's null, it'll give you 10. And if it's the value, it'll give you the value. It's kind of like an if-else kind of situation. Very helpful. Might want to think about using that. Okay, that's neither here nor there. Now, there's a couple of problems. One, this line has a problem. And if you are not getting the results you expect, I might suggest you try that. Now, the idea is you're rolling a 6-sided die. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. If you figure the die is fair and you've got a real random sequence, 1 should appear about as many times as 2, should appear about as many times as 3, 4, 5, 6. It should be about equal. So if you do it 36 rolls, you should see about 5 or 6 of each number. So maybe 7 of some and 5 of another. But you should see about that. If you do this and you don't see any number, or any of a particular number, that should be a big clue about your arguments for random.next. The second thing, random, when declared this way, is a pseudo-random sequence that cannot be repeated from run to run. Since I obviously know what sequence I expect in the test, it's up to you to figure out what seed to put in here. The seed is just a number, 1,000. When you seed a random number, it will always be the same sequence. It will be a pseudo-random sequence, but it will be the same sequence every run. So in order to test it, I must provide you a seed. Or you must agree. You must have what we call a priori knowledge, beforehand knowledge of what the seed is supposed to be. It's not in the description of the project, but where must it be? The tests. Read the tests. Aaron. You're supposed to be outputting. Nothing returns. Random numbers. In this case, 36 random numbers. Between 1 and 6. Between 1 and 6 inclusive. Excuse me. Now, weird things might happen if I type in Bob. And again, the test will tell you what I expect. Right? How many people have gone to the test, and what are you supposed to do if I type in Bob for the number of rolls? There's a number. I think it's 10. Yeah. Okay. So this value or default may come in quite handy for something like that. Okay? Question? X.value or default is a method. So value is a property, gets the property. But if it's null, it will throw an exception. Value or default will check to see if X is null. And if it is, this expression will evaluate. Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry. Never get sick. It's a terrible idea. It'll return 10 in this case. It'll return some default value. It's a method. If I actually just minimize that and go to Visual Studio, it's kind of how it works. Int x question. Oh, you still can't see it. I've got to go like that. Okay. Int question mark x dot value. Get value or default. It's not value, it's get value or default. And you provide it with either nothing, which I think returns 0, or a default value like 10. Okay? That's it. Let me get rid of this here. Okay, that's all. If there's one more question, we probably do one more.
So for multiple choice, technically, if you think it's a fail, it's going to get half credit.
Huh? No, it's like 5 or 10 points for the correct answer, 1 point just for answering it. No, it's not like you get half credit. No, so based on the difficult, and yeah, you won't know how. I'll have to put how much your correct answer is worth in the comments. I'll have to change that so that you know what's at stake. Okay? Yeah? Allowed. That would be notes. Yep. So you can watch the YouTubes. Yep. Is string builder going to be on the test at all? Sorry, my internet just died. I'm not joking. Here, you can hear the dinosaur. Oh, why is it not beeping? Oh, I died. All right, never mind. My internet just died. I don't know. Why don't we work under the assumption that, yeah, it's going to be on the internet, on the exam. But obviously, since we talked about it for about 10 minutes, we can't expect you to do much with it. But there might be a question about why string builder is different than string. Not necessarily using it, but why one might want to use it, which we did spend a little time going over demos, okay? All right. And stop recording. See you at the exam.